Hi, I'm Shomi Malik, External Affairs Director at the ACI. The ACI is one of the education partners for the Cannabis and CBD Live, and with that in mind, I'm delighted to bring you insights from Jen Canna and Taylor Mammon. You may have seen the recent news of Jen Canna's acquisition of Taylor Mammon, putting the two organisations in a great place to service brands in the UK, Europe, and globally. Today, we've got Jen Canna's Chris Stubbs, Chief Scientific Officer, and Nathan Wogman of Taylor Mammon, Managing Director. The two of them will be taking you through what any aspiring CBD brand builder or entrepreneur in the space should be looking for when looking to identify a reliable supply chain partner.
Introductions. It's Nathan Wogman from Taylor Mammon. How are you, sir?
I'm great, thanks. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing lovely, doing lovely. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your firm, and I'll do the same.
Hi, I'm Nathan Wogman, Managing Director of Taylor Mammon CBD. We're a white label and private label manufacturer, as well as a storage fulfillment centre and distribution. We really touch most touch points of the CBD industry here in the UK.
Excellent, excellent. I'm Chris Stubbs. I'm the Chief Scientist and one of the founders of Jen Canna. And it's great to be here with you talking about how to build a brand with a solid supply chain. I guess one of the questions from my perspective is, we're out from the ingredient side, always looking to be as flexible and versatile and long-term partner, if you will, for folks like yourselves, which now we formally are, which is incredibly exciting in one way. But what do you look for in an ingredient supplier? What do you look for in a manufacturer? What keeps you up at night? How do you create that foundation for the brands that you support?
Yeah, obviously it's a very good question, and one that I could spend all day answering. But I think in the interest of trying to keep it somewhat concise, I think yeah, the issue which has certainly kept me up at night the most, and I believe the same of our director and the people that we work for, is ensuring that what we do deliver is extremely compliant and is legal, suitable for purpose, and ultimately is whiter than white in everything that the company does. And I think it goes without saying, with CBD as a raw material and the associations that come with the plant in which it's derived from, it's extremely important for me that we vet every supplier that we work with, that we physically go and visit the suppliers on which we source our raw materials from, just to ensure really that every aspect of every client, everything that we deal with is real. And I think it would be a not fair to suggest that we really are kind of the experts in auditing, the people that audit GMP facilities. It's never something that we pretended to do, but for us, a big part of it is ensuring that who we work with are real, it's physical, and taking it to a granular level in terms of ingredients, but the certificates of analysis and the efficacy of all products are fully validated before they enter our supply chain. And actually, most recently, what we've also started to do is retest the products to ensure that the certificates of analysis that are provided to us by the raw material supplier are double validated by us. And again, that's a obvious level CBD, because it's a huge point. And I think we have seen it with some suppliers producing material or certificates of analysis which simply don't match up and contain cannabinoids which are illegal, dangerous, and which are very important to us. I mean, all the way down to just a simple lavender extract with a certain claim for its linalool content. It's important that we double, triple validate absolutely everything. And important for us, I should say, that we know we're not necessarily the experts, so you lean on the experts to give you that security.
Fair enough, fair enough. So there's a point that I wanted to talk about there with other ingredient validation. But before we go there, what are your thoughts on and questions that might come up on, and this might be more of a past than a present question, but how concerned are you or your brands, your customers, or other industry participants with the where does this isolate come from? Where does this extract come from? And have you had any sleight of hand, experiences where you're expecting one thing and it's actually, something else? For me, the reason I ask the question is the way we built this business is knowing that I can point to the 1 or 200 acres, out back that we grew or our farmers grew it in to give folks like you that comfort.
Mm.
Do you find yourself constantly navigating those kind of waters in terms of supply chain?
Yeah, I mean, again, just trying to think the best way to kind of frame up the response. I think, to answer bluntly, I think when the company first started, and we were sourcing raw material, um, yeah, there were a number of stories where we were buying one thing and receiving something else, and it
Sure.
made you realise. I mean, much like, the day I purchased my wife her engagement ring or wedding ring, you go to a broker who you trust, who produces you with a certificate which denotes the clarity of the diamond you're buying. And based on this certificate, of which you can't quantify because you don't know what you're looking at, you are handing over thousands of pounds. And that's something that I didn't get as an engagement thing. And I suppose as part of that customer experience, you realize how important it is, um, and how kind of valuable that role is in
Yeah.
validating that kind of process. So I think, yes, lots of stories in the past of being missold product, but we learned very quickly. And I think our relationship started pretty much at that same sort of time between Taylor Memon and Jen Kana. We saw huge validity in the process, and that the testing was there. And I think, might be slightly confused answer, but getting to the point, and I try to avoid. This was supposed to be the webinar that I didn't mention novel foods, but here it is again. But I think
Sure.
now, the novel food process has ensured that it's separated, pardon the pun, the wheat from the chaff in terms of the raw ingredient manufacturers. And it's only those raw ingredient manufacturers who have carried out the detail of the studies required to obtain the certification, um, which is kind of the watermark or the perception of a valid product, whether or not you can actually use, material in topicals or CBD or vape. So I think, the 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 regulation that novel foods gives us, and the framework in which that legal, that kind of works, is going to be a huge benefit, of which you guys
Yeah.
are leading the charge. And I've soon noticed the calls from brokers or snake oil salesmen, or the random samples that you used to receive in the office, that just doesn't exist anymore, as people go back with their tail in
That's
between their legs, which is great for the
That's
industry.
interesting. That's really interesting. And I feel similarly, I guess, grateful for the regulation in that regard, because there is so much noise with that kind of, the broker networks and material types that you expect to be one thing and certainly are not. And when
Correct.
much more strict requirements, there's not room for us to play there. I mean, now from our perspective, we have uh, process flows and testing requirements that differ from us supplying ingredient to you and UK partners versus what we sell here domestically. And one would
Sure.
think that the standard should be here and they should be the same everywhere. Um, but it's not quite that way yet. But to have less noise and have a partner that you can trust as an ingredient supplier, and help with product development, right? We have a lot of cross pollination ahead of
Oh,
us, which
no,
is a good thing.
absolutely. And I
So
think, really, I mean, that's my ultimate frustration. Well, the frustration with the novel food process as it stands, I think, does have, unfortunately, a kind of spin-off in stunting the growth of product innovation and perhaps even application methods,
Fair.
which we were working on, but before the kind of the novel wave hit, for want of a better word. So there are some real advanced carrier techs that we've been working on, some with you, some without you, where we've kind of had to put that on ice for the minute whilst we go through the process. We have
Sure.
clients that are asking us to innovate some really interesting new product SKUs, and I think whilst we go on the kind of the research and development side of it, the frustration is that I wouldn't want the regulation and the framework that brings to really stunt true innovation and product development, which I can't help but think will be the case. I talk about innovation; it's not a flavor profile that's different to another one. It's an application method or a way of infusing CBD to increase true bioavailability.
Sure.
That we're kind of stunting its growth. But again, I recognise that the importance of the health framework which we're getting is just, as a creative, it's a frustrating
It's a balance, right? I mean,
moment.
one of the things that I've been thinking about in this regard is, I guess number one, it's hard for product development and evolution to occur if the ground beneath you is constantly shifting, right?
Yeah,
So, the one saving grace is that, our partnership allows that foundation to solidify. The Novel Foods allows that foundation to solidify, and it does mean that some of this product development work and applications work and even delivery device work is going to be longer lead, but that's where we benefit from a synergistic, systematic approach to those goals, so that in the time period it's going to take to do that, the investments that we have to put into to testing, to validation, to stability work, and maybe additional tox work, maybe PK work to prove bioavailability. You know, the goal is going to be for us and for others to plan appropriately so that we get as much out of those investments as possible in the shortest period of time possible.
yeah.
And
And sorry to
that's
cut across you,
when I
Chris.
look at supply chain logistics and a partnership like ours, and then your partnerships with your customers and brands. We all have, I think, a new charge ahead of us to work together differently to make those strides. Because I think, frankly, the larger enterprises out there, they're kind of used to planning this way. They're used
Mm,
to pre-market approval. They're used to longer term investment. So it means your lens essentially has to look even further down the road
so,
once the supply chain and the baseline foundation's intact. Right? Agreed.
yeah,
That's how I think of
couldn't agree more. And I actually think there are a few examples of brands that I think have um, not launched correctly,
it.
and I
Mhm.
think those are the ones that we took an inquiry from, and then 6 weeks later we're on market because it was rushed and ill thought out because they were there to seize an opportunity which may or may not have existed. So I think we're definitely seeing that with the new people that we're working with, both on a, I mean, I say a white label basis, but really the essence of our business has never been supplying something off shelf. So it's
Sure.
more working with people to create formula, which now they are forced to do things correctly, methodically, and well placed and timed through the process. So I think
Right.
again, it's shaping up and creating a more formal and mature market, which is only a good thing.
Agreed. So that's actually kind of a good segue to one of the other things we thought about talking about, which was, yeah, the good, bad, and the ugly around product development experiences. And I know, you mentioned the validation of ingredients, carriers, on the front end to ensure that, your usage rates, and the profiles of the other extracts or ingredients you're using are on point. Obviously, you got to validate the formula on the back end as well, right? And there's some pre and post production work that has to be done there. But I guess maybe a twofold question, because I've got some sentiments here. But yeah, an example of a product development nightmare, failure to launch, or something you never would do again, uh, with or without a solid supply chain. What's something that you just would
Well,
absolutely avoid? And what do you find yourself, asking your customers? Be patient with us. Let's not do this. Let's do that.
it's a really good question, Chris, and I wasn't quite expecting as the deep and narrow nature, but I think if I'm honest with you, I think there are. Well, I can safely say the one product that I have no interest in attempting to develop ourselves ever again is sexual lubricant.
Oh, that's
It
still
was,
fun.
I know, yeah, a lot of fun in the office, but very very challenging to work with for a number
Sure.
of different reasons. And I think, and that kind of leads me into the next point. My biggest challenge is, I'm very interested for your viewpoint here. My biggest challenge in getting comfortable in my own mind is the concept that you can make an oil water soluble.
Hmm.
And I think for me, the biggest challenge is in people understanding that an oil is not soluble. It's a case of trying to get a CBD to kind of disperse accurately within a product that you are making. But in the very essence of the material, you're losing up to 90-80% of the CBD. It's in its own carrier oil. And I think the reference to the sexual lubricant piece is really that I think there's still a long way to go in bioavailability in water soluble products. Yet the market seems to love them,
Right.
and I think again wearing our heart on our sleeve and always wanting to innovate and create for purpose. I think there is a lot that the biggest challenge for me is getting comfortable and working with an extract that gives true bioavailability as well as being soluble or can work with an aqueous base. And
So that's
I don't know if that's an equal curveball back to you, Chris, but you tried it with me, so now I'll give you
you're gonna
one
throw
back.
it back this way. No,
Yeah.
it's good. It's good. I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because one of the things I think, the points that's resonated with me over the years in terms of supply chain consistency is when you get, sure, a broad spec, an isolate, those are fairly easy product types. But when you're in extracts, generally distillates, there can be a lot of variability, not just from a composition or purity perspective, but the composition of the extract itself,
Mm.
right? So how many waxes, fats, flavonoids, terpenoids, other are in that matrix. And when you take that PD process into account, and if you are saying, you know, man, every other batch is different, right? And I can't emulsify or blend these oils the same way every time. You've got supply chain issues. What the point points to me, part of it points to that. And then there's what you're going into. So uh, one of the things I think that we've benefited from is understanding that the raw material is the raw material, that the extract is the extract, that the process is the same every time, which allows you to emulsify very, with the same process every time. You're right.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, no, fine. I'm being distracted. Yeah.
So, so one of the things we've benefited from in some of the liquid nano emulsion development work is knowing that the composition of these extracts is very, very similar every time, which allows you to get to a place where
Yeah.
particle size is 30 to 40 nanometers every time, and that the load, just as an example, is max of 50 mgs per mil every time. And then if you want to add, which is my nightmare, phone call that I had a couple of weeks ago, it started with this. I'd like a 50 milligram milligram per mil nano emulsion, so an aqueous base, which feeds into all these water soluble product types, beverages, shots, lubes, what have you. But I've got 2 other ingredients that are carried in oil, and I've got 30 others that are aqueous soluble powders, and I want to stuff all of that into this thing. Can you give me a quote and a
Yeah,
timeline?
exactly,
My head
exactly.
just went
Yeah,
like, I have this great foundation to work from. But in the consumer, you're right. I think in the market is starting to understand 2.0 product. And
mm,
together with our collaboration, all these things we've talked about, we have to have more foresight, but we've got good foundation. We've got great consistency. It's about tenoring that expectation with the
yeah,
client and what really
yeah,
can be done easily and what can take a lot more time. I mean, some of these projects take 3, 4 months to do the PD and validation work. In your market, you've then got to go through pre-market approval essentially. And so it's very exciting to look to the future,
mm,
very exciting to know where things are coming from and have stabilized the supply chain and all the noise. But product development work is tough, and there are certain projects and products that
mm.
from time to time and I know you just have to say, this is not the time for us, not the project for us. And I wonder, in your view, do you see more of that, less of that, or is it all just better planning going forward? Hard to
I
say.
think, I think again, a politician answer, and I'll try and sit on the fence and just say a bit of a blend of it all. I think there the innovation and the advancement in technology and innovation which comes through growth has definitely been stunted through the novel food position as people have, I use the word, have been uncertain as to what the outlook is. And I think uncertainty breeds um, a feeling of having to tread water because you don't know which way it's going. And I think, you know, so therefore, those sort of inquiries in edible style of products have slowed down because people are uncertain of what the outcome may look like. Where we're
Right.
seeing the advancement in I'll use application methods or otherwise is in now in topical based products, which is kind of a bit of a free reign. So we're working on some really interesting projects with some of the kind of the biggest muscle rehabilitation companies
Oh,
to
sure.
work to look to get CBD infused in products that are already known to be very good for muscle relaxants and help. And I think particularly, and I know the subject can be far reaching, but CBD as an isolated cannabinoid um, is, as far as we can see, is performing extremely well in inflammation issues for pre and post sport recovery. It's the product, it's the compound which is um, hugely beneficial for that direct thing. And I think, I suppose, but I'll get to my point in a second. There are plenty of people that take CBD tinctures that are disappointed that they haven't had the desired effect that they want. When in reality, it's either an entourage effect or a different cannabinoid or structure that they need to deliver their effect. But when it comes to, let's just call it a muscle relaxant cream, it works more or less 100% of the time, 100% of the population. So it's exciting. I think the stunting of the growth in some departments has forced the acceleration of innovation in departments that were not getting the attention before. So,
Great
you know,
point. Oh,
I'm
yeah.
really quite excited. I'm really quite excited when we start talking about some of these interesting things that we've been working on, which we would never have, wouldn't even be in the crosshairs of what we were doing if we were single focused on the biggest selling SKU lineup of the tinctures.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, to a certain extent, we're stunting the growth of a small department, but because of that, the market has grown so strongly in others to the point that we've got the big, large Canadian American companies now interested in the technology that we're creating here, and it's not the other way around. So
It's good.
It's all good.
That's good stuff. I mean, that's what I call a very opportunistic and optimistic view, right? There's always the silver lining. There's always something else to do. I mean, this space. That's one thing I'm incredibly humbled about when I look at my career past and future. There's always something else to do. I mean,
Yeah, correct.
a way to change phase. You know what I mean, and continue to. Um, again, leverage a solid supply chain and awesome product development to get to a place where you're giving the world access to quality cannabinoids. And that's the goal. That's what we talked about, keeping us up at night. That's what helps us sleep at
Yeah.
night, right? Um, Question for you on brand advice for those that want to start a brand or shift their brand focus, given some of these new barriers, if you will. What do you say to somebody new that walks in the door, someone that you grab from another supplier, a
Yeah.
new client to you? What do you say to them?
Well, the one thing I'm always sure of when I speak to new people who are looking to create a new brand, they're often thinking about. Um, I think like, in order to see true penetration and success with your own brand, you need to understand your target market and build your brand to service that specific market, and
Sure.
not create a brand that kind of fits all. So,
Hmm.
having a kind of a proverbial conversation, there are no real examples, I would say, of a good brand which specializes in golf. But the essence of the product portfolio is the same as the one that specializes in swimming. But I think there are too many brands that um, are not sure who their target market is, try and appeal to everybody, and get lost in the mix of what everybody's doing. So the piece of advice I'd always give to a new company is, who is your target market? Own 100% of your target market, and you will have a very successful business. Don't try and own 100% of the CBD space.
Focus.
Um, that would be yeah, that's number one for me.
Yeah, I would say we've had similar experiences. We've had a lot of inquiries in the private label program that just they lack true focus, lack direction. And because, again, we can't really scream about what cannabinoids do yet because of, human efficacy trials are not done yet. You find yourself servicing requests that include, lots of other botanical actives and kind of, I guess, an attempt to make a product for all people, but
Well,
also
yeah, yeah,
it's on this or that. And it's to me, it's too much me too. And I'm seeing more responsibility in a lot of ways, especially with some of the more mature brands that they might even have a consulting toxicologist. They might even have a chief medical officer. They might have really thought through the formula and what not to do as well, right? Because there's certain things you probably just should not mix together because they have metabolic
yeah.
contraindications, as an example. So we find ourselves, and I'm sure you do too, trying to create some of those focal points from time to time, uh, unconvoluting formula so the product development process can be streamlined, and even given the opportunity for folks to start somewhere with something more simple that has focus, that's maybe easier to do as you take a longer view development process for the 2.0 product launch. Maybe a two-step process instead of let's spend months and months and months going round and about with something that probably won't work in the first place. um, what do you think in terms of trends, Nathan, coming up in wellness or in other botanical ingredients in your market? What's trending? What's hot? What do you see inquiries for? maybe this is more of a topical question than a ingestible question, but
No, I think.
what's
Sorry, the reception cut out a bit, so I think I caught the gist of your question. I don't know if you can hear. Can you hear me?
it's breaking up a little bit, but there we go.
I'll keep going because there's no difference. It's just dropped out a bit. If I understood you correctly, I think we're seeing, certainly whether COVID or not, but there's a real kind of big on health and wellness. Obviously, speaking, which wasn't there necessarily at the start of the business. There is a big understanding in the medicinal benefits that exist with the botanics. So mushroom, the particular product which we're seeing huge take up of at the moment, together with kind of generally speaking nutraceuticals, so the inclusion of vitamins to help a functional benefit. So it's really, plant-based products which elicit a functional benefit is really the additions that we're seeing on top of CBD.
Same here, super
Yeah.
similar. Mushrooms have been really really popular, as well as other adaptogens, vitamins, minerals. It's to me, there's a
Oh,
hearkening.
and I'm sorry, I should have said terpenes. Terpenes are getting super prevalent in terms of
Heck yeah.
whether they're cannabis-derived terpenes or even just plant-based terpenes.
Right.
We're doing an awful lot of, we're doing a number of business that don't actually include CBD, but it's just the
Just
terpenes. And
terpenes.
I
Yeah.
must say, since trying those products, it's amazing the effect that terpenes on their own have. It's quite very interesting. In addition to everything else, sorry, just saying.
No, it's a very fair and a very good point. We've been approached by several of our larger customers with the same ask. Can we do a line without cannabinoids and use other plant-derived terpenes and actives? It's amazing what plants can do for us. And I think one thing I've learned in my career, which is so cool, is that this plant has kind of hearkened another look for many back to the botanical world for solutions that we've forgotten about and left behind long ago. And
Yep.
it's really a good thing. You couple something like that with our side of the supply chain and being able to get back to the farm and be outside and really take part of that heritage back has been, I think, from my view, a humbling and holistically awesome experience. So off we go.
I can imagine. Yeah, absolutely. Great.
Excellent, brother. Well, I'm good. I think this was awesome chat.
Yeah. Enjoyed it a lot. Thank you very much.
Likewise.
Cool.
Look forward to working with your partner.
Yeah, you too, man. Speak to you soon.
All right. Cheers.
Thanks.